Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Increase Your Profits by Improving Your Data Accuracy. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are Seth Maislin of Early Information Science and Greg Council from Parascript. Parascript is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. As we get started, and I have a little bit of about AIIM information up there on the screen for you, I'm just going to offer you a few pointers for viewing today's webinar. By joining the webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. And across the bottom of your screen is the list of all of the widgets that we have available for you today. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list that's to the right of the slide area. There are also a few other documents and links in there to help you learn more about today's topic. Feel free to ask questions throughout the hour using the Q&A feature, and that's to the left of the slide area. We will hold these questions until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them, but you can also use this feature to comment or ask for technical assistance. At the end of the webinar, a brief survey will open up into your browser page, and I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd take a few moments to offer your feedback and to suggest other topics for us to cover. You can also access this survey in the list of the widgets that are across the bottom of your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. Now to introduce the speakers we have with us today. Seth Maislin is a Senior Consultant Strategist and Principal Consultant of Taxonomy and Information Management at Early Information Science. For more than 20 years, he has demonstrated strengths in classification and taxonomy, indexing and content modeling, information architecture, search, and usability. He has dedicated the last 10-plus years to providing sustaining information management solutions to clients facing real-world and complex findability challenges. We also have with us Greg Council, who's the Vice President of Marketing and Product Management at Parascript. And Greg specializes in revitalizing existing products and bringing new products to market in the document capture, enterprise content management, business process management markets. He has over 15 years of experience in requirements gathering, product planning, competitive market analysis, and channel engagement for both on-prem and SaaS solution software. So right now, actually before we turn things over to Seth, I need you to come up to your keyboards, and we're going to conduct a couple of polls. We're going to do 2 of them now and another one later on in our webinar hour. So feel free to come in here and answer the question here. Is accessing relevant data from your documents an important part of your current business model? Is it not important at all? Important, but not part of your business modeling, but it is, or it is an important part of your current business model. So go ahead and take a moment to answer this question here. And I'm just going to take a quick peek here. And seeing the results so far, that some people are saying that it is important, or it's an important and currently part of your business model. So it's good to see that this is definitely on your radar. And the next question we're looking for you to answer is, which document types would contribute the most to improving profits or reducing costs within your organization? And just pick one of these: invoices, claims, receipts, application forms, or is there some other type of document type that would contribute most to increasing your profits? So go ahead and check that off. And Seth Maislin, I'm going to invite you in here to comment on what we're seeing so far. With the first poll that we're seeing that this is a very important issue, and then we're seeing right now that invoices, claims, and application forms are really important to folks. Is this the kind of thing that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by how 2/3 of the answers are in the sort of the large form version. Right, so you think about invoices and as being a relatively straightforward type of document that's got some consistency. Application forms don't, and other, of course, I don't imagine there's a lot of consistency among the others. I think the challenge is that these days we're we're seeing some really mature technologies in some of the standardized forms, and I think people are starting to look for things that are just more complex and pulling that information out of those systems.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and turn it over to you then, Seth, to begin your talk.
Sure, thank you. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank all of you for coming here and admitting that you think data quality actually matters to your lives. I appreciate that. In fact, I'm going to speak a little bit, for quite a while now, I've been wearing a hat around governance, information governance, data governance, which is, very much not so much about compliance, the way that a lot of folks think about it. We like to think of it as opportunistic governance. That is, if you are paying attention to your processes and you're maintaining the quality of your data over time, what opportunities become available to you? And that's kind of the hat that I'm wearing today as I present. And part of that is because I don't think anybody here needs to be convinced of the basic premise of this webinar. How to increase your profits by improving your data accuracy. I don't think there's anybody on this call who's like, really? That's what they're trying to teach us? Oh, I'm skeptical, and that's why I'm here. No, I actually think you guys are all pretty much convinced that data accuracy matters and can actually improve your business one way or the other. I think what I want to speak about then is to not try to convince you that it's true. I would rather get into some of the complexities of it in the sense where, how do you know it's true? How do you make it true? Right? It seems so obvious on its face, but the linkages between data quality and the actual benefits that you receive on the other end are not always obvious. I agree they exist, but how? For example, if you were to ask me how much money is in my checking account right now, I could take a guess, but without actually going online and looking or calling my bank, I don't know. All I have is an approximation. I haven't actually checked my balance in a few weeks, so I could be quite wrong. And granted, it would be nice if I were more accurate, but I'm not entirely sure how that accurate pays off. If I really knew down to the penny how much money was in my checking account today, where's the payoff? I mean, maybe I'm a smarter person and better at math, but I don't really see how I gain financially from that knowledge because I'm not applying that information in a way that actually leads to profitability. But I could recognize that the balance is in trouble and I want to avoid paying fees. I could realize that the balance is a little high because a checking account is a poor way to invest money, and maybe I want to move my money around. Maybe looking at my spending patterns would help me be more efficient and stop spending on $4 cups of coffee. So how I use the knowledge is really important. Right now, by not knowing or by having a very poor quality guess, I'm unable to leverage that information, and therefore I don't have the gain. So I want to speak about that in terms of what I like to think of as sort of the data culture. So if we all assume that the quality of your data matters, there are some pretty interesting observations as we dive into that. The first is that there's a threshold where if your quality is not good enough, you are actually losing money or losing opportunity, right? If your data are just terrible enough, you are wasting your time, you are realizing risk, you are making mistakes, you are making very bad decisions, and that can continue to cascade. So we know that the quality needs to be high enough in order to just run at a baseline level. We can continue to improve the quality, continue to reduce risk, continue to create greater efficiencies in our processes, especially those where if we're grabbing numerical numbers, they can speed up our numerical analysis. But at some point, I believe there's also a diminishing return, meaning you could pour tons and tons more effort into it, but the benefit you get from that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And we know this if for no other reason than actuarial science, where they actually study this. So given that there's this range, there really comes a point where spending on data quality is going to have this natural endpoint if we're just focusing on the goal of quality on its own. We can get to 99.99% or whatever it is that we're after, and then so what, right? It's not worth getting that extra decimal place of accuracy. Instead, what we want to do is we want to move that curve upward to where you see the dotted line. And we want to ask ourselves, how could we be using this information so that even without improving the quality further, we can gain more from it? Can we leverage that information? So as with my checking account example, If I know what's in my checking account, I could actually make a smart decision with that information, and now it's worth it. Whereas before, it's diminishing returns. I just want to make sure it doesn't go down to zero. I want to make sure that I'm paying my bills. So, and you'll notice also the way that I've drawn the curve is that the more quality you have to begin with, the more potential for gain there is as you move into a data culture. So if you think about the fact that we know they go together, we know there's a correlation, that organizations that have good data quality tend to be better at what they do. What we're really after is the causation. So here's a simple example. This is the United States tax form. It's the 1040 actually from 2 years ago. And you can have technologies that are able to accurately read the numbers. And how accurately you read them is something that's very important and is worth exploring. I'm taking it even a step further. Once you have that number accurate, what are you doing with this? Are you just checking your math? Because if all you're doing is checking your math, you are going to have a diminishing return, right? You're going to avoid the risk. You're going to be very efficient in how you manage forms. And truthfully, there are definitely parts of business, aspects of business, where just being able to process these forms accurately would be amazing. There's no question. And I'm suggesting that we can go further through a data culture. So if you have the zip codes read accurately, you can just record them, or you can do geographical analysis. You can start using that information. If you're able to read the names of the dependents in the form, you can use that information and do some cross-referencing and possibly find fraud that's taking place, right? If you have the dollar amount in there, yes, it's useful for arithmetic, but you can take it that step further and say, well, I can drive workflow on those numbers, and I can be even more efficient, not just in getting them right, but in directing certain circumstances to different officials and different processes. I mean, ultimately, the goal of accuracy is not just to be accurate. It's to be faster. It's to be more credible. It's to be more capable, right? This is opportunistic governance, right? If you want to improve financial systems, well, you've got to start with the quality of your data. And so the challenge becomes, what are the business metrics? What really matters to your organization that you're trying to measure, right? We're not in the business of data quality on a day-to-day basis, right? We're in the business of leveraging that data quality in order to do something interesting. This is a similar example where the form is not as neat as the tax form. This is a form that my elementary school would force me to fill out every year, even though I didn't move, even though my phone number was the same form. So obviously, from an efficiency point of view, if my handwriting could be read and that information could be mapped to the account already set up in my daughter's name, then they would be able to detect whether or not there's been a change year to year very quickly. And I'm going to take it a step further. My phone number is in this form 3 times, as a home number, as a mobile number, and as a work number. Now, you could grab that number and accurately put it into the database. But what are you doing with that? Is it interesting to note that there's only one phone number here? It means there's no backup. And it may be that the reason they ask for 3 phone numbers is not because they want me to write the same thing down 3 times. In fact, it's the opposite. They want a backup number. They want an alternative. And because I don't provide them with one, well, that's interesting. And now they could minimize risk. They could contact me. They could say, we really need a second phone number. We really need somebody else in case of an emergency. So quality is a multidimensional thing. And all of those bullets on the right-hand side are different ways in which you can think of sort of the attractiveness of data, right? It's not just the accuracy or the number of decimal places, the precision, right? It's whether or not the information is logical, right? To say I have 3 phone numbers that share a number may not be logical. It may not be reasonable. But what's the integrity of this form, right? What is, how current is this? I filled this out in September. It's already March. Maybe the information's no longer timely. So it was true 6 months ago. So when we think about all the ways in which quality matters, the key is to connect it to what matters to the business, right? Data is an asset, right? We're not collecting numbers for the sake of collecting numbers. We're not collecting names for the sake of names, right? Data is something that you can sell. It's something that can be an input to a business process so that the process runs smoothly. It can be contextual input, so you can make a smart decision, such as knowing the zip code or knowing the area code of a phone number can make a difference in terms of when you make a phone call. Or knowing whether my bank account is close to 0 can help me when it comes time to decide how I'm going to do my shopping, right? It can drive workflow. And then from a governing perspective, you need numbers that describe your whole process. What are the satisfaction levels? How quickly are you getting things done? How profitable are you? The key is to measure the effects of data. And as your data quality goes up, you need to look at the correlations and the causations that come from that, because that's really what we're after. And that's where governance comes in. This is a slide that's not specifically about data, but it kind of proves the point. If you're looking at the bottom rung, you've got a digital team who might be interested in the quality of search. So think of the data that comes from marketing. You're looking at your conversion rates, your click-through rates, your general satisfaction with search. And that's something that matters to you if you are in charge of search and you're in charge of your content strategy. But your CEO wants to know how it's going to increase revenue. And the connection between the quality of your content search and revenue is not that obvious. What you need is this chain so that the metrics and the KPIs at each level inform the next level up. So the quality of search is important because once you've got that down, you can now look at your overall business process for creating content and promoting that content and maximizing your conversions. Once you've got that down, you can start informing the next level up, which would be your business units. And at that level, they're interested in, are they responding to the market very well? Is their strategy being implemented? What is their brand doing out there in the marketplace? And that is information that leads up to the CEO and the enterprise strategy that says, look, because we're following the market, our revenue is going up. And that's a very complicated, many-step process to get from one piece of data, such as search quality, to another piece of data, which is revenue. And when we look at data, we have to be prepared to look holistically and find these kinds of connections. So look at your organization around the effects of data and ask yourself, if we had the best data, or if we had better data, or if we could invest more in having more data, more complete data, more appropriate data, more timely data, more trustworthy data, what would we gain? What could we gain? And at the business process level, you're looking at the quality of your deliverables and the reduction of error. Or at the very highest level of your organization, you're looking at brand perception and reputation. You're looking at revenue. You're looking at your awareness of the market. All of those things are driven by data. I'll take a moment to talk about financial data. This is sort of a brainstorm. When we think about financial data, you could think of this as market data. It's the numbers in your portfolio. It's the performance of items that you own. It is your transactional data that's taking place. And when you think about all of those numbers that are on your invoices, or in the case of a credit application, right, the numbers that are there and the information opens the doors to get more information. And we think about what really matters. Again, we're not in the business of having perfect numbers. We're in the business of using those perfect numbers to get us to good account management, to business alignment, to improved decision making. Right? And this is a list that represents, what your financial data should be able to do for you. What's interesting about this list is that if I didn't tell you that this was about financial data, you might not have guessed, because these are goals of data in general. Right? There's a little bit in there that seems like financial, but the truth is there's accounts management just about everywhere. We have to manage our customers. There's risk management just about everywhere. And it becomes a question of, are you able to make the right decisions at the right time because you have the necessary context? So in summary, what I'm saying is that the linkage is the hardest part. If you ask yourself what profitability, what business benefit you want to gain, and then ask yourself which data do you need to improve to get there, that is actually a hard question. If you're focused on a single operation, you can do that. If you're looking from a larger perspective, you need to have a larger perspective on asking the question. So the idea of governance is to have everybody collaborating in a useful way so that the data that one team is generating can be the input for the next team. People can speak with each other. Usually the data we need are not the data we create, right? It's the data we collect or ask for. So you build that system of governance in place. You get people talking. You become very focused on why you're doing certain things, and you're measuring your success in that space. And then you decide what matters. You go through that 4 or 5 layer chart in your business. How do you know that this person is being efficient? How do you know that that team is doing their job accurately? How do you know that your business process is aligned with other business processes? How do you know that your strategy is being achieved? And each one of those requires some kind of metric to observe that is based on your ability to put the data together. It's about establishing that data culture. What else can you do with your data? If you first have to take the step to respect your data, then yes, that is your first step. You have to do it. You cannot take your data for granted. You cannot just assume that what people are typing into the forms is automatically correct, automatically relevant, and automatically useful. You need to put some energy into that, and you need to make sure that that energy is well applied and you're hitting the targets that you need. Once you have that respect in place, start asking yourself, how can I reuse it? What else can I be doing? And that's the linkage that we need to look for. When you've got the big picture set up in terms of the teams talking to each other and your targets are all understood across the business, you build your roadmap. What do you want to fix or improve first? What data do you need? What do you need to ask your vendors to provide for you? What technologies do you need to put into place to boost quality or efficiency? And you move forward in that direction. I'm going to end. I've got a couple of resources available at our website, and I'd be more than happy to speak with anyone. You've got my phone number 3 times. It was in the form. Feel free to drop me a line. I'm happy to continue the conversation or change the conversation and talk about governance. We have a webcast that we gave recently around the role of the Chief Data Officer and a recent article that was published on digital governance and how you think about your metrics and ROI, just as I was speaking about. And I'll say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Seth. And just to let you know, when you download a copy of the PDF of the slides, you'll have Seth's contact information as well as these links that he's listed here. And in addition, this article on digital governance is available to you in the resource list that's to the right of the slide area. So I mentioned that we had another poll, and here it is. If you come back to your keyboards and answer this question for us, do you have any concerns about your current data quality and its measurement? And it's just this scale here of no concern, some concern, you are concerned, or you're very concerned. And so just looking for that current data quality and its measurement and your concern level. So go ahead and click on that. And Greg Council from Parascript, I invite you to come in and comment on what we're seeing the responses here. And they are...
Yeah, I think the positive thing is that there's nobody with no concerns. And I think that's generally because organizations struggle with just an increasingly wide variety of not only information and data, but in its various formats and things like that. Add on to that or layer onto that lack of process controls or visibility into those controls leads to kind of an ambiguous state. And something I'm going to be talking about is how you gain better visibility into it, because that is also a challenge. So I'm not surprised. What I am seeing is 24%, almost a quarter, are very concerned. So hats off to you. I think in some cases, once you know, then you're put into a state of concern. So that could reflect those organizations that have actually started to go in and delve into data quality issues.
Okay, so take it from here.
Yeah, great, thanks. So Seth did a great job at talking about some of the various use cases and challenges and why, establishing some of the practical reasons. So, apart from ungrounded you must have good quality data, why it matters. I think in large cases we can all talk platitudes around data quality, but when it really starts to matter when you see what the net effect is, either from a bad type of situation or a good one. From a practical standpoint, what I'm going to talk about is not software solutions that we provide or anything like that, but my intent is to arm you with some background knowledge around how to assess data quality, and when you're looking at solutions, what types of things you want to ask for. The overall solutions providers, whether they're software vendors, SaaS providers, or whatnot, we've kind of backed ourselves in the corner and gotten into this habit of talking about features and functionality. But we haven't really talked much about or do as good a job at talking about performance capabilities, so the real outcomes here. I think the real net is that while you're buying features and functionality, the intent is that you want to apply that capability to achieve a certain objective. And that objective is not implementing features and functionality. It's, in the case of information, identifying, accessing, and then using information in a very high quality type of format. It doesn't mean that you have to turn away from looking at specific capabilities, but just as important is you have to look at things like the error rates of staff when it comes to doing data entry or reviewing information, verifying that information from, let's say, an accounts payable process, which is an easy thing to pick up, is actually correct. But also understanding what the error rates of systems are, and then what the ramifications are, so calculating what those costs are. If it's a low cost, not a problem. If it is a higher type of cost issue or risk issue, then you may have to address it. Some of you may, on the webinar, may be aware because you might be in the industry, but it's kind of a taboo thing to talk about accuracy. In a lot of kind of sales and selling situations, when a potential client or customer does ask that question, and appropriately so, there are a lot of attempts and sales tactics to try to move you away from that, focusing on overall workflows and things like that. But so is it wrong to ask how accurate your system is? The answer is no, but you really have to understand what you mean by that question. And it all has to be grounded in overall performance of the system. So let me give you some examples of what you're typically going to be discussing, and what the industries in general have trained organizations all over the world what to do, specifically with respect to document-based information, things like the ability to classify documents using visual elements, or using natural language processing or statistically based algorithms, the ability to layer business rules, and then some of the business processes around that. So all of these things are functional capabilities that typically are great when you're creating, when it goes to creating an RFP or creating a shopping list to look for potential solutions. Another thing you're likely to see is commentary about the range of data supported. So it may be language type of data or differences in data. It may be the types of data supported in terms of text-based information, unstructured-based information that's locked in documents, relational information. It also may be handwriting information, so formats. The unconstrained type, electronic, so documents that are born digital and stay digital. And it also is around the structure of it. So is it highly standardized information, or is there no expected standard? So these are the kinds of languages or the lexicon that a lot of, practically the majority of solution providers will utilize, but there's scant information when it comes to actually understanding the actual accuracy or precision of solutions. So let me give you an analogy. Now, I'm sure there's probably no one on this webinar that has not come across or has not read an article regarding autonomous driving cars. From Google, all the different types of experiments that Tesla they're doing, whether it's the unbridled optimism of what it might mean for transportation, or the fear-based type of hand-wringing when it means to potential loss of jobs and other types of things. Regardless of what the stance is, I don't think anybody would look at the promise of autonomous driving vehicles as a situation where a person gets into the car, starts it, and while there is the capability for the car to automatically move through traffic and make the right turns and adjust the speed and everything like that, I don't think anybody would be considering a scenario where all of this is done, but a person has to verify and okay it before it gets done. That would be ridiculous. Most of us have dreams of being able to sit in a car and do our email or do some other type of work. Or realistically, I know what most people are thinking. They're going to be doing Candy Crush or Facebooking. It doesn't matter. The idea is that you want the autonomous vehicle to do its work while you can do yours. Sitting there behind a dashboard having to hold the wheel is not the aim of the game. But when it comes to document-based processes, you're actually doing that. And why is that the case? So here's an example. In a typical document processing workflow, whether it's classification or extraction of information or even locating that information, you have input documents and you go through some sort of technical processes that may or may not involve recognition. And the real outcome is that because the system has not been tuned, or there has not been this process of really understanding how to tune it, the likely result is that there is close to 100% verification of some sort of information, whether it's correction of that data or just hitting the enter key and verifying that it is accurate. But to achieve and what you really want to achieve in terms of automation, regardless of the technologies you use, is to get the highest amount of straight flow through of information right through the system without any kind of manual intervention. This is letting go of kind of time-honored processes of verifying the output of the system and letting it move through the system, accepting some sort of error rate. Error rates being the mistakes that systems make. It is very well known in certain types of circles that data entry and various other types of manual tasks carry with it error rates between 2 and 6%. So the objective is to reduce that error rate to lower than what a human being can do, dealing only with the data that is truly erroneous or the system cannot negotiate. So the objective is to get 80, 90, 95% straight through processing, no manual intervention, leaving only about 5% or less of the data to be able to have somebody look at it or verify it. But this is certainly not the case. Let's dig a little bit deeper into what you need to talk about and what you need to understand when it comes to accuracy. So again, I'm going to discuss this in terms of document processing, and it's going to be a little bit laden with technologies like OCR, which are more or less applied to images. But accuracy in general and the concepts here are applicable regardless of what technology you implement, whether it's natural language processing, some sort of statistical modeling. It covers all sorts of information. So in terms of OCR accuracy, it is relevant, absolutely is relevant. You want arguably the highest accuracy level of any kind of transformation technology out there. But it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing when it comes to your own needs. So your data accuracy is not the same thing as the core underlying technology. And an example being in the terms of, and the form that Seth provided, what you're interested in is not character level accuracy, but field level accuracy, and sometimes page level accuracy. So an example being, oftentimes the accuracy rate of OCR is touted at 99% or greater. What that translates to is on a document with 500 words, you're going to have a certain subset of those characters that are incorrect. But that doesn't mean that 30 words are incorrect. but it can translate into something a lot higher than a 1% error rate. Oftentimes it can be 6% or higher. So understanding how underlying technology accuracy translates into your applications is essential. So what is commonly done in the industry if you take on the data accuracy challenge is that you need to generate what is called ground truth data, which is a representative set of real production data and its true values, and then use that to measure the accuracy of the system. What this will result in is visibility into what percentage of data is incorrect versus what percentage of data is correct. And it just so happens that most of the document processing technologies allow you to also understand its own interpretation of accuracy through the use of what is called a confidence score. So this confidence score is a field level, or sometimes a character-based level approach to understanding what could be accurate versus what isn't. And the idea being is that once you have been able to benchmark your system and understand at a field level what the threshold is for confidence, you can set that. And the result is that, for instance, a Social Security number can have a very, very high straight-through processing rate. We call that the read rate, and at a very high accuracy rate, leading only to a small percentage that actually has to go under manual verification. But rarely do organizations go through that trouble to get to that level of refinement. And that's where the end result of taking a lot of human intervention, typically 90% or above, really comes into play. Because if you're not going to go to that level of precision to tune your system, the result is you've got to hold on to the wheel, you've got to turn the turning signal light, you've got to apply the brake, even though you've got a system there that is capable of automating a lot of this work. So some terminology that you will want to look up, and I've just provided just a high-level definitions here. And these are against two types of automation. One is classification, and the other is location and extraction of information. So when it comes to classification, it's not good enough to just understand what an accuracy rate is. You have to understand at minimum, two types of measurements. One is the precision of that system, so the relevance of the system being able to apply correct classification on documents. Example being, you have 8 invoices, you have an invoice processing system you want to be able to classify by vendors, regardless of your approach in doing that. You have a batch of 20 documents, 5 are correct and 3 are incorrect. You can read it here. The precision is 5/8 or 62.5%. And then the recall is how you can apply the relevance across the entire batch set. So having these measurements, along with the system's internal confidence, allows you to establish a threshold that means more data goes through the system straight through without having to require an unnecessary intervention. For data location extraction, we've got some common terminology, the read rate. So the read rate is a percentage of data that is successfully located and extracted. So let's imagine an explanation of benefits form where you're trying to find a service line detail. The read rate would be the percentage of all explanation of benefits forms where we've got a service line detail being able to be pulled out of that document. But correspondingly, with every successfully located piece of data, there's going to be an error rate associated with it because something may not be extracted correctly. It may be a partial of extraction. It may have a character level error. So the error rate is the percentage of that data that is erroneous. And then again, the confidence threshold is that point which determines, it's a system-generated threshold that determines what needs to be reviewed and what can go straight through. So these are some key elements that have to be part of any kind of conversation when you're looking at automating any kind of document process. So lastly, that pretty much wraps it up, except for the piece of what I'll talk a little bit about Parascript and what we're doing. We do have technologies, but the difference in our approach is that we actually focus on the outcomes. So it's not about implementing features. It's actually not even about implementing our own software. We will work and apply our expertise in automation and measurement and tuning to your systems, adapting new technologies to your systems to achieve the objective of as high automation as possible. We offer two programs. One is an enablement program targeted at enterprises. So for little or no cost, we will come in to your organization and go through the range of target documents and establish existing error rates, as well as identify what capabilities could be brought in to improve those error rates and to improve and arguably automate as much as possible. And for business process outsourcers, we do something a little bit different, but similar the approach is we will come in and help to improve overall accuracy and flow through of business document processing in an effort to improve profitability, improve competitiveness, as well as improve the flexibility of your systems in terms of the range of information you can apply. So that's the end of my presentation. You see my contact information if you have any additional questions, or as well as the URL of our company website where you can grab a lot more information as far as what we offer. So Teresa, I will hand it back over to you.
Well, thank you. We've been listening to Greg Council of Parascript and Seth Maislin of Early Information Science. And also the link to Parascript's website is in the resource list on your screen. And just know if you click on any of those links right now, just go ahead and do it now, because it'll open a new browser tabs, and you can download, save, do whatever you like with those links after the webinar, but at least that'll allow you to get to that information right now. So feel free to do that at any time, and certainly download a PDF of the slides so you can get a hold of all of this information. And just wanted to go into some of the questions that we have coming in, and I'll do our best to get to all of the questions we have here. It looks like we're going to have some time for Q&A today. And Greg, I want to direct one of this first question over to you, since you were talking about this in your section a bit. Someone was saying that, you know, if we already manually monitor data quality at every stage, how do they get to that same level of accuracy through automation? And will it really be cheaper?
Yeah. So basically, yes, the objective is really not automation. Let's be honest. The objective of any type of system like a document processing or classification system is to access as much quality data at the lowest cost. Unfortunately, there's been a trade-off, or there's been an apparent type of trade-off, but it's pretty false in terms of the reality is that in order to get high-quality data, you need to actually have high levels of verification. So the answer is in doing the upfront measurement of your current system performance, as well as in the same process, gathering the existing information that will allow you to assess the performance, and then use that to either tune the system that you already have, and then to understand what those thresholds are that will allow you to achieve a straight-through process. So it is the key ingredients are understand your current system performance, but also have that all very necessary ground truth data, that information that will allow you to measure your system as well as have a benchmark to any type of improvements you have. Once you do that, and often it's a time-intensive thing, but when it comes to reducing overall costs, it can be a 10th or a 20th of the cost of what it takes for a manual verification process annually. So you do it once, and you periodically test your system, and it has a return well within a year. I mean, oftentimes within a few weeks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Seth, I have a question someone asked specifically for you to answer this, that you speak about the role of data quality. And someone's asking what you believe the role of information quality to be.
Sure. Some of it is really just a question of how you want to position it. So some of it is just sort of the nuance of language and trying to match your audience. When I think about governance, I think these days about digital governance. And for me, digital governance covers a lot of different things: data governance, content governance, people governance, process governance, regulatory, tech, user experience. All of these things can really be strategically observed and improved, and that's what we mean by governance. If you were really trying to hold my feet to the fire, I feel that when you're talking about data governance, you're really focused on the values. And when you think about information governance, you're focused a little bit more on the knowledge, whether that's knowledge you're delivering, as with content governance, or knowledge you're obtaining. So you could have, again, really great data. What becomes a little bit more interesting for me is what's the information that you get from that data. And it could be layers upon layers. It could be analysis. But if you think about, tracking the financial market is drawing more than just the values that are there. It's being able to see the graphs and lay the graphs out in a way that tell you something interesting. And to me, that's more the information governance. You're more interested in what I think of as root cause analysis. So if you're at 98% accuracy, why that 2%? What's happening there? And you'd want to sort of explore that if you feel that there's something to be gained by boosting that 2%. And also provenance, where it's layers upon layers of trust, right? If I were saying that you are outperforming the market in your portfolio, you might ask me how I know that, and I would have to define the market. I would have to understand your portfolio. I would have to tell you where my numbers are coming from and the credentials of the sources who provided those numbers. I'd have to check the dates, explain my math, talk about my predictions and my adjustments and so forth. And there's a lot that has to go into that one little piece of information, which is that, oh yes, you're outperforming the market by 4%. So the data governance is what gets you all of the root cause information, right? The baseline, the baseline knowledge that then allows you to go to that next level and start making smart business decisions. And to me, that's where the information governance starts coming in.
Thank you. Another question here, also about data quality, and let me ask this of Greg, because it gets to be well, let me just start this with you. Someone's asking that, why does data quality deteriorate over time when they turn on their OCR to a high accuracy just like half a year ago? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, generally it's because organizations don't really have control over the quality of the information that's coming in, or the standardization of that information. Rare is it that we work with a client where they can control everything. If it's a form, it's the form design. If it's another type of document, it's how that document's acquired. Let's take an example of the increasingly popular approach of information capture via mobile device, for a camera. The smartphone camera can come in and take a nice picture, what looks like to you and me is a nice picture, but to a system that's automated and tuned for one particular type of input, it can wreck everything. So, in an increasingly multi-channel type of approach, you have to have examples of information that cover all of these channels, and then to make sure that the system is tuned to deal with each one in their own types of characteristics. This goes apart and beyond just natural, what I call drift of document capture or information capture types of technology. So if you look at things like scanners hardware, it deteriorates. It becomes dirty. Always affects image quality, and the same thing can happen with other types of input capture devices as well. So it's something that unfortunately, even though you might have done a very great job and a comprehensive job at tuning the system and achieving a certain level of precision, you have to revisit it. It's not good enough to just put oil in the engine one time. You've got to go and keep it up.
Seth,
Teresa, can I add something to that?
Sure,
just sort of give another perspective. The reason I love this question is because it means somebody's paying attention. To notice that quality is deteriorating over time means somebody's watching. right? And that was something that Greg was speaking to about having, the insight, actually being able to measure the performance, and it's something that I spoke to about having the right metrics. I think Greg is doing a good job talking about, the actual reasons of what's happening, and I'm sort of want to point out that just being able to ask the question is great. It's really important. You can't acknowledge or recognize change in something if you're not measuring it over time. And you may not know why unless you've got enough things being measured that you're able to put together. So in the case where the form changed or the incoming content changes, or maybe you've changed the source of where your incoming knowledge is coming from, that would be something that you would notice the cause and effect of, or at least the correlation, and allow you to make smart business decisions. So I appreciate the idea that it's being watched.
Well, Seth, let me start this next question with you. Someone's asking, how does a business move from an approach that's reactive to data quality events to a proactive data quality approach?
It's a great question. I would start by saying you have to know your baseline before you can do anything. And if you don't have that baseline, you will be reactive, because something will happen and you'll notice the consequences of it before you notice the things happening, right? It could be as easy as, when you dial somebody's phone number and you get it wrong, right? And it's like, oh, why did I have a wrong number here? Why is this number wrong, right? Well, the error happened long before you ever actually dialed that number, but you didn't notice because you were not measuring it at that point, whether you're spot checking it or doing it automatically. The idea is that you have to be reactive because you're not measuring it at the point that it happens. So that's really what it takes. Measure the quality, the attractiveness of your data as early as possible, at the point of ingestion, or even before the point of ingestion, if there's such a thing in your process. And then as you start seeing the cascading effects of what is good enough, it then gives you the opportunity to truly build a roadmap that says, well, now we see what's going on, and we've assigned owners to these processes. That's the other piece of the governance. We can now start thinking about how boosts in quality, whatever, can have boosts in efficiency later on, right? You're going to play with that diminishing returns, and you're going to push against it. So I would say step one, measure and set your baselines. Step two, create owners for the various processes and the data that you have. And then three, start thinking strategically about where better data quality could be handled, right? You're already watching it. Now you want to step in front of it.
Thanks. Just wanted to take this opportunity just to let everyone know or remind you that less than a week away from our the Big AIM conference down in Orlando this year, and there are actually a few spots left. So if you're still interested in coming, go to the AIM conference website and check out some information. Have a couple of really exciting keynote speakers coming up. Cheryl Cran, who's going to be talking about the future of work and change leadership. And then Dan Lyons is also one of our other keynote speakers, and he's a best-selling author, and he's a Fortune magazine columnist. So looking forward to some really good not only keynotes, but the roundtable sessions. We've actually put a lot more roundtables discussions in there, so there's a lot of peer interaction and learning from each other, in addition to the actual conference tracks that are going on for the speakers who are going to be there for that. So check out the AIM conference website. There are still some seats available, so welcome for you to join us there. And just want to remind everyone that since we are coming to the end of the webinar hour, just this webinar has been recorded, and it is going to be available in the next day or two at the AIM Resources Webinars page. Don't forget to download the resources that were to the right of the slide area, and also to take the survey that's going to pop open when the webinar ends. And you can also get that survey from the widgets at the bottom of your screen. And I greatly value your feedback and the time it takes you to complete that survey. So please offer that feedback, and also to suggest any future topics you'd like for us to cover. I also want to thank our underwriter, Parascript. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs like the webinar series. So thank you, Parascript, for your sponsorship and underwriting support. And so as we are here at the end of our webinar hour, I do want to ask each of our speakers for their closing thought or a key takeaway from things that we've discussed today. And I'd like to begin first with Seth Maislin from Early Information Science. Your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, my closing thoughts really tie back to that last question, which is, how do you get to be proactive in this space? How do you become really opportunistic around your data? And I think it comes down to, really embracing a culture of data as an asset, right? Put your data to work, your content to work, right? Really recognize that the knowledge that your organization has really comes down to the data, and that's what drives the success of your business. You need to have the right data coming from trustworthy sources, and you need to be applying it in processes that you trust. And I feel that, the proper governing way of doing this is not one of compliance. I think when we think of data quality and we tie it to compliance, I recognize the need for it, but I sometimes think that compliance is very reactive. It is, in a way, it's fear-driven. It's fear that you'll get caught, or fear that you'll make a terrible mistake, or fear that you're not following the rules, or you're going to do something because somebody else is fearing it, like a regulatory body. And I'm not saying it isn't important. We want to minimize risk. We want to do ethical behaviors, and all of that is great. But if data is an asset, then it's not something to be feared. It's something to be leveraged. It's something that you can truly embrace. And you can only do that if you can build the culture around that of observing your data, owning your data, and looking for opportunities to do more with it. So thank you.
Thanks, Seth. And Greg Council from Parascript, your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, Seth really covered the proactive nature and the governance of quality. I would just add on, challenge the status quo of what your systems that are currently producing data are doing and what they're actually costing you. I think that in a lot of cases we're too lax in terms of accepting the current business processes and not really scrutinizing the level of cost that it takes to get quality, or basically, how much of that data is actually of good quality. So it takes looking at it from not just a technical application standpoint, but really, the accessibility, the quality, as well as achieving the lowest cost possible to get that. So just to look at it in a different way and focus more on that straight through automation. There's a lot of great technologies out there that you can leverage to truly lower costs, but essentially have your cake and eat it too.
Thanks, Greg. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. That's all we have time for. So for AIIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Have a good day.